So this is our tale from the Trail of Shadows from REI Co-op.
Who are we? Who are these people that are standing in front of you? My name is Dale Smith. I am the lead engineer of the search platform at REI.com, at the REI Co-op. I've been there for 5 years. I've been in the software engineering game for 40 years, and you're looking at me like you've got some youthful elixir that has magically made you young. No, I sold my first program when I was 14, and I've been steadily working since then. So you can do the math. I was at Boeing doing manufacturing automation for about 12 years, and then escaped into the Seattle tech industry, where I got my first introduction into search engines, Dogpile and Metacrawler. I don't know if anyone knows what those are, but I integrated them into the GoToNet portal. That's Chris.
Ooh, that's me. That's a big picture. So I'm Chris. I'm a QA architect at REI. I've been at REI for 7 years, on the search platform for 5 years. Been in the software industry for 20 years, which makes me half of Dale's age. I just didn't age as well, apparently. When in the software industry, the first thing I did was I worked at Sierra Online. I got Test Half-Life. I've worked on some Big Brother, spooky exchange indexing software, medical software, government databases. And the last thing before REI did was worked on the launch title of Connect.
So who's REI? Everyone know who REI is here? Who's shopped at REI? Like maybe this week, I don't know.
Ooh, good turnout.
We actually have 2 REI stores in Las Vegas, so feel free. REI started with the quest for quality. Our founders in 1938, Lloyd and Mary Anderson, needed good ice axes. They were local Seattle climbers, and they and their friends got together. They couldn't find any good ice axes in Seattle. So they got together, remember this is 1938, and formed a co-op, and they decided to get climbing gear from Europe. And they started the co-op. And today we have, it's quickly expanded to a vast array of quality outdoor gear. And we have 149 stores and more than 16 million members. A little trivia, the original ice axe, you can see that our door handles in all of our stores. They're replicas of those original ice axes.
Now you'll notice Dale mentioned quality gear. You're going to hear the word quality a lot through this, but this is all about how we baked quality into the entire process. So, quick overview. We've got a cool story, and we want to share our journey with you. We're going to talk about where we were, some of the big challenges, how we use data and just smart thinking and cool tools to find the solutions.
What we did, here's what we're here to tell you about. We replaced our SaaS, or software as a service, search engine with a on-premise solar stack. We did this without disruptions. We migrated all of the REI product search experience, and with all the rules and relevance and all that goes with that.
So we wanted to have a quality solution. Solar does all kinds of cool, shiny stuff, so we worked really hard to not be distracted. We just focused on an as-is to as-is replacement from our old SaaS service.
We were able to reach the goal because we baked quality into the system. And we made sure we had a way to validate all the parts working together.
So where we were, basically stuck in the mud. Slow searches, some of them are averaging almost a full second. Not a great experience for e-com. We had random outages, random being 4:30 on Friday afternoons was pretty predictable. And we didn't have a lot of flexibility for our business partners. Obviously, we couldn't do cool stuff like signals. I don't know, Dale, living that, what was it like?
We were in a cheap wet tent.
In the mud?
Yeah, full of mud.
In a wet sleeping bag.
Kind of like this.
That's what it felt like.
At least we had a tent, but it wasn't going to be meeting our purpose for the foreseeable future.
So, our goal, a big part of it, obviously quality. The products we make and sell are all extremely high quality.
Oh, I love that picture. Our members really rely on our gear to help them safely enjoy the outdoors. When you're hanging off a frozen waterfall with just an ice axe, some rope, and a couple of screws, quality really matters.
Now, obviously, going to a website is not going to save your life or whatever, but if we have a poor quality digital asset, you have a bad quality experience, are you going to trust the gear to go hang off a waterfall like that guy? No way. So we had to look at the problem from a couple of different angles. First was, what are the customer expectations? Customer goes in an REI store, the Green Vest employees are going to quickly help them find the exact piece of gear that they need for their adventure. It's not a typical retail experience. When they come to our website, they have the same expectation. They want to find that same piece of gear and get outside and go be happy. Kind of like our search team, and this is a team picture of us.
There's luck. All right, of course we had some internal expectations. We had to have a fast and stable search platform. We had to operate in a rapid development cycle, and we had to save budget on licensing and support. Everyone's seen this triangle. It had to be good, fast, and cheap. We were able to hit all three, mostly. But this presented us with some interesting challenges. First big challenge, we could not make any changes to the existing search API. REI has its own search API. We couldn't touch it. Reasons being, we had a website, mobile apps, we have point-of-sale apps, and internal tools that rely on that API. So if we were to change that, it would have been a huge cost to us. We wanted to deploy this rapidly, so we decided to keep the API the same. As well, we needed to limit SEO impact, and folks that are in merchandising sales here know all about SEO. We want to make Google happy, so we could not change the URL patterns that we had exposed on the site.
Another big challenge, who thinks the Solar Stack is really awesome? I know, okay, at least a few of you. Who also thinks it's kind of scary and overwhelming, especially when you're first jumping in? We didn't really have experience. We'd just taken the same training as a team that a lot of people went through this week. We had to tune this search engine. We had been on our previous search engine for 4 years. That's 4 years of tweaking, tuning, A/B testing. What that adds up to? About 600 rules in the system. We had to recreate those rules, and you can't just do one-to-one. You have to figure out how to do it in a solar way. And then, of course, there's always figuring out, well, are they really right? Are they relevant?
We also had about a dozen users to train on the new tool set, building rules, configuring synonyms, and all that goes into the care and feeding of the search beast. To add a higher degree of complexity, we were also relying on some of our vendors for functionality that we needed that didn't exist yet. Spoiler alert, they delivered. And the biggest challenge, though, is verifying if what we did had broken anything in search. What ends up being a good search result? Is it still good? Next slide.
Now, like we said, Solar Stack is awesome, but it is scary. We had dynamic facets, performance, and all those search rules we talked about.
So to add to the complexity, we had a couple of tools that we layered on top of Solar. We have Lucidworks Fusion, which most of you should be familiar with in this room. And we also have Innovative Solutions Fine Tuner. This allows us to implement search rules sort of in a traditional sense of adding holistic search rules. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. We also, go ahead, sorry.
It's all right. So we also had some basic assumptions like synonyms will be easy. We already do them off user queries. Well, then we have things like Solar and its phonetics, another wrench in the works. Also, we use multi-term synonyms. Someone does a 2-word search for Benchmade. We need to throw that together into one word for the brand Benchmade for the products we sell.
So who here remembers Spinal Tap? Anyone? Anyone? Yes. So we have a saying in search in the search team. This Solar Stack has 47 knobs, and they all go to 11. And Nigel loves the Solar Stack. Sorry.
So our trail of success. How did we solve this stuff? First, we started with a lean dream team. We had experienced search engineers, experienced search business owners. We had a couple great devs, some QA. You'll notice in the orange, that's our PM. She created a nice bubble of safety around us that really, everyone in the business knows solar does that shiny stuff too, right? She shielded us from all that so we could stay focused on that as-is to as-is solution. And our product owner happened to be the search expert at REI, so there wasn't a bunch of back and forth. He just sat with us and we could go, hey, what about this?
Notice something about that team. We all have the same jacket. We did that without. That's a sign of a close team. We did that without even consulting each other. It's kind of weird.
So our trail of success here, we got to nurture that team dynamic. It takes some care and feeding. The core of our team had been together for about 4 years when we started this project. We knew each other, mostly liked each other, trusted each other. We took the training together, so we all started on the same footing. We were all on the team at the same time. It wasn't a, oh, we need an extra dev, oh, let's throw in some QA because we're ready. We were all there at the beginning. We were trusted by leadership, which is huge. They gave us the support and the space and the resources we needed to make sure we were successful. They saw we were doing something cool, and they let us do it. We trusted each other. As you can see, we did a lot of hiking and different things outside of work. This let us be really transparent with each other. We challenge each other. Questions that should be uncomfortable were just normal for us, right? They'll be like, hey, have you thought about this in test coverage? Or, you know, what about this unit test? What about these scenarios? And no one got their feelings hurt. We just pushed through it. And it was a really healthy dynamic. Part of that, we all have this high level of accountability for ourselves. We held each other to that standard, and somehow it worked. So that's a good thing. The most important thing is we absolutely knew what success looked like because we committed to building quality into every step of the process. So we've got our team, we've got the team dynamic. You need a team philosophy, right? Give up hope.
Literally.
Good, I'm glad some people
somebody
laughed.
left.
It does sound funny, and this is an actual Post-it from Dell's desk. I took the picture, and he's like, you're putting that in the slide deck? Yeah, because it's so true. If you're basing and planning things on hope, you're already going down the trail with only one boot and a tent with no poles. That's no good for camping.
So here's another Post-it that I have on my desk, and it's don't expect, manage, or plan for heroics. This takes a lot of courage. Heroics in programming is it's actually an anti-pattern. You don't want that. So this takes, both of these things take courage to overcome. They require a deep dedication to quality, and we keep harping on that word, but it has become ingrained in everything that we do. In unit tests, integration tests, contract tests, UI tests, but also deeper into the actual architecture, being able to validate the operations of the system at any point. And it also takes support from management, and luckily we had that.
So we keep talking about quality. Let's go ahead and define it for you. Quality is the measure of excellence in your product. We set that bar way up here. Hopefully your bar's not down here. It's somewhere in the middle or up here also. But once you know where that quality bar is, it makes it easy to have a target to shoot for. So how do you get to quality? Let's go a little old school and talk about Aristotle. This was on the internet, so it's absolutely true. It's not even from a meme. Quality is not an act, it's a habit. It's not an act, it's a habit. So what we did, we focused on the good habits we could follow and build on, get rid of the bad habits so we could make sure we had quality everywhere. So, the first part of it, who owns quality on a team? Click, there we go. If you're serious about quality, then everybody has to own quality. There you go. See, it says everybody owns quality. So we'll talk about a few of the good habits, how we work that in our team, and then Dale's going to talk about the technical side and how we work that into the architecture of everything. First of all, you've got to build good habits. One of our good habits is we're co-located.
Sorry, I got behind.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
Another one, you keep your business owners involved. In this case, new requests come in for features, or we have questions about user analytics. We have these discussions almost daily between engineers, QA, and our product owner about that good stuff. But enough about that. We can have that talk some other time. I really want to talk to you guys about how I can help the cool people on the team. Engineers. The engineers are cool. So what can we do to help those guys? We sit together and we focus on finding bugs before code is written. A very important thing. Who wants to write a bug, fix a bug, test a bug, when you can just keep it from ever making it to code? By sitting there and working together and going through these whiteboard sessions, we're architecting together. We're doing mental lifting. You ever have that big, awkward thing, you can't quite get it around the corner, and someone comes along and picks it up and helps you? You probably could have, but it's so much easier. We help each other with those things. We talk about risk, and we focus our effort. This is what we're going to code first. This is how we're going to test it. And we get aggressive on the risky areas. Then we talk about the standard unit test and test scenarios. These all lead to bugs being found before your code is written. And when you're building a foundational piece like search, it's a huge, important piece. It's a huge thing for quality. Now, this is a little piece of gold. This is something you'll want to remember. If the best thing for getting good habits, it's a three-part test. It's like a triathlon has 3 events. I give my engineers a 3-part quiz to make sure they're not releasing legacy code. First question I ask, is it testable? Next one, is it maintainable? And the last one, is it supportable?
Or the other
Or you can do them either way. If you don't meet all 3 of those and the answer to any one of them is no, you're releasing legacy code. Nobody likes to work on someone else's legacy code, and you really don't like to work on your own and have to refactor it before you do it. So just don't do it. I mean, Dale, how do you like 2 a.m. support calls?
Oh, only on the weekends. That's the best time.
Following these good habits, we had almost no tech debt and only about 10 bugs active when we released.
All right, let's talk about the actual solutions here. One important aspect is we started with great tools. I mentioned before, Innovate Solutions Fine Tuner, looking at Andrea, she's from Innovate Solutions. Lucidworks Fusion, everyone should know what that is, and Solar Cloud, which we all know and love. Important aspect, these tools were meant to work together. Right? So a basic diagram of what we've got going on. We've got our REI Search microservice. We are using microservice infrastructure. Calling FineTuner, which is managed using the FineTuner UI. This queries Fusion. Again, is managed through a Fusion UI. Typically, we're using pipelines, basic generic Fusion functionality, and then obviously queries the Solar Cloud. So let's go into a little bit on what FineTuner is. What does FineTuner provide? It allows us to manage the search rules for non-engineers. Folks in merchandising and other organizations like that, they want to produce rules for product promotion. They want to produce banners and redirects and other manipulations of the search results. And they also want to produce query adjustments, things like Drilldown and so on and so forth. Important aspect is it has a UI for business users. And because we were replacing a SAS solution that had this functionality, this eliminated our need to write this ourselves. So this was actually a key component to us selecting Solar and the Solar stack. So a little detail on this, just to give you an example. This is a real drill down rule for sleeping bags. And what this does is it does a bunch of regexes and some keywords, keyword checks, and ultimately I think I can use this guy here. Yeah, it works. It ultimately adds this sleeping bags and accessories drill down rule into the URL as the query is performed. So this actually drills into, given a keyword search, it drills into a category of our products.
I'm sorry, you've got 3x5 cards and you got a laser. You're high tech.
Well, there's another one here. Lucidworks Fusion. We used it to manage, or we use it to manage the solar cloud configuration. It provides some pretty nice tools for that, versus doing it manually by hand. Folks in our merchandising and findability teams, they want to manage things like the synonyms and that sort of stuff. It allows that functionality. We use it for configurable search pipelines. And again, it has a nice UI for business users. And obviously many more features. This is what the conference is about. This is an example of the REI Search Pipeline. We're setting some query parameters you can see over here. Ooh. Let's do that again. You can see we're adding the field list and some grouping and so on. So basically it keeps us out of the business of having to add all these boilerplate parameters to the query. All right, so the next part of the solution is a great software ecosystem. And at REI, we have a very well-supported digital platform. It includes a first-class continuous integration model. And folks familiar with continuous integration concept, basically you press the button, it's going to production. We have that. We have a very good model of that. We are a Docker-based platform, so we have Solar deployed in Docker. I could go into a whole other presentation about the Docker stuff. There's actually one coming up tomorrow, which I'm going to go to see what they came up with. It was fairly complicated. We're on a microservices architecture, which allows us to deploy our functionality in small pieces and scale and manage it in a self-contained way. We also have some very high-functioning monitoring and metrics tools like New Relic and Grafana and Graphite. These tools did a lot for us, but there's still quite a few technical challenges that we had to solve. So, I've heard a few things about dynamic facets today. A couple of solutions. I think there was a talk at Kohl's, and there was some other discussions about dynamic facets. We came up with an interesting solution. Here's a basic problem that we had. We have 200,000 product variants. It's not a lot, but it's a pretty good collection. We have 250, and actually it's closer to 300 facet-worthy attributes. So what we didn't want to do was ask Solar to do all of those facets for every query. It was very non-performant. The performance was very poor. One of our targets was to be under 200 milliseconds for all of our average searches. So here's the typical facet set that we have on backpacking tents, just in case anyone was unaware of what facets were. I'm sure most of you are. All right, what was the solution? The solution was 2 queries. First query, first step 0 was we index all of our products with a list of important attributes. So we actually added the attributes that we wanted to facet on to every one of our products. And we did this through categories and some other manipulations of the data. We did a first query to read those attributes. And then we calculated, using some secret sauce, the 10 to 15 key attributes for the facet request. So here's an example of the results from that first query. We call our query field refinable by, and here's a search for pants, I think, and you can see things like size and rating and so on, but you also have fabric type and inseam range. So these are things that are collected together and merged. The second query, oh, that's great, is ultimately the full request with all of those facets from the first query. So now we get, again, the same query for pants, and we have things like, well, brand and gender and color family. We also have things like tights length and RICO detector. Google that. It'll be interesting.
If you find Dell at the party tonight and tell him what RICO detector is, he'll buy you one of the free drinks.
Fleece weight, that sort of thing. So you see how we actually let the products tell us what the facets should be. And ultimately, we end up with every one of our queries only asking for about 10 to 15 of those facets. And we could actually extend the number of facetable attributes to thousands if we really wanted to. It really comes down to that first query, eliminating the chaff and getting it down to the 10 that we care about or the 15 that we care about. This graph is actually from our metric system, and it's a basic, we basically see this every day. It's a fairly, represents consistency in our query results timing. So no matter if it's a query for all products in camping versus a very specific query, we're only asking for those 10 to 15 attributes. And so it's a very consistent and measurable result. All right, we had another problem. And this is actually the bigger problem. And I think, hopefully, folks that have transitioned from another search engine, I'm looking at you guys from the H&K, have this problem. And that is, how do you verify that the product results that you're getting from your new solar stack are matching your old search engine? And how do you load test that against load test the new search engine? So here's the solution, and this is why we have shadow in the name of this presentation. It's called the shadow query. So basically, all production queries are sent to both search engines, and then the results are compared. Simple as that, really. The comparison functions that we use, I'll get into that in a couple of slides here, and we did that without affecting the actual existing search performance. So for a period of time, we actually had our SAS solution was the primary search engine, Solar was the secondary search engine. So it was like that safety run in parallel for a while, and then we swapped them. And the secret is we let our customers test our system for us. All right, so the shadow query model, we've got, this is pretty generic in terms of search processing. You have a search request, you select the search engine, translate the request to a search engine parameters, because we have our own API here. We have to translate those parameters. We execute the search on our primary search engine, and then we translate and normalize the search results. So it's preparing it for returning it to the user. This is where things get interesting. We have a switch in our system that allows us to turn on and off the shadow query. If it's on, we launch the shadow query thread. This is a background thread that processes outside of the request thread. And then we return the primary results to the user. In either case, the user is seeing their results while the system goes on and does a second translation to the shadow search engine, executes that search on the shadow search engine. And like I said, early on, this is Solar, SAS Solution is the primary, translates and normalizes the search results, and then calculates and records the result comparison values. We'll get to this slide in a second. I wanted to talk about this one for a minute. So again, I want to stress that our search API is normalized. We have a search engine agnostic API, meaning that we haven't let any of the search engine specific paradigms and language and parameters sneak into the API. And you see that once in a while. You'll see sites that have, you can sort of tell what search engine they're using just by some of the parameters and some of the language that they use. So it allowed us to preserve the existing API contract, because we really didn't have to change anything that the user's seeing or the client's seeing, and we were able to also preserve the existing SEO patterns. And this enabled our shadow query. So here's an example of that. This is our refinement parameter for someone that has refined by an insulated feature, large size, and a color purple. And this should be familiar to some of you. This is the Solar FQ parameter set that does that query. And then here's the corresponding SAS solution. And if you know anything about some of the SAS solutions, you can kind of guess at what the SAS solution was.
So at that point, we felt pretty good. We had the shadow query. We had results from both search engines. We could compare the speed against each other. We knew that we were getting the same results, but we didn't know if they were in the right place or how close our relevancy was. We're engineers. We're like, man, we have this data. There has to be a simple way to put a numerical value we can understand and graph on this to see if we're getting closer as we're building in rules and doing all these things.
There was values. Let's list them out here. So here's what we did for comparing the shadow query results. Some of the obvious ones, recording the times. Times is important, especially when you're doing retail. Faster is more money, right? We recorded the total number of results in the deltas. We recorded the count of products in results A and not in results B, right? So it's kind of the obvious ones. Not so obvious one. We came up with a custom Demerara Levenstein distance that we used product IDs instead of letters. So Demerara Levenstein is typically used to calculate the distance between two strings. We used to calculate the distance between two product lists.
Now, Demerara Levenstein is fun to say, if you say it right, Demerara Levenstein. Try it later.
Here's a graph of the Demerara Levenstein converging. What we were looking for is all of these things sort of merging towards zero and converging towards being similar and the same.
So we were merging towards zero, but we knew we were never going to hit zero, and we really didn't want to, because as the rules got better and as we were doing quality of search and quality of browse testing, guess what happened? Solar started being more relevant than our old solution. Not getting zero was just fine with us.
Let me give you a little bit of discussion about this Demerara Levenstein distance. For those unfamiliar, it's basically the Demerara Levenstein algorithm calculates the minimum number of operations to transform a list of products, in our case, from one sequence to the other. So we have insertion, deletion, substitution, and transposition as the operators. So we also made each operation have a cost, and we weighted that cost higher towards the beginning of that product list, because products at the beginning of the list are more important. All right, so a little graphical representation of this. You can see from the blue on the top, this is our search for a given search result. This is the list of product IDs from our SAS provider. This is our SAS solution. This is what we consider the good result. This is the result that we're aiming for. Again, we're focused on quality, so this is what we were targeting. This is the type of operations that the Demerara Levenstein algorithm would find in this, and you can see the results from Solar. We have an insertion of A, we had a transposition of B and C, a deletion of X, and a replacement between G and Z. So that would be assigned a cost of that first product being more important and more costly, more valuable than the last, the G and Z. So this would actually be recorded with the value of 19 in our metrics database. Okay.
So, preparing for Solar Day. Before we could do it, we had to load test it. We had all those production queries. We took those and we played them back at high load, cranked it up to see how much it could take. It's amazing. The more you give it, Solar just keeps speeding up there for a while as those caches warm up, which is pretty cool. We monitored the CPU, memory, all that good stuff. We went, ooh, it's all about that heap space.
You'll note that there's a negative number there. Solar was actually, in this case, averaging 643 milliseconds faster than our SAS search engine. We managed to crash Solar a few times, and this one was pretty tricky. Let me back up. I don't want to show that right now. That was ugly. We were able to use our telemetry to see the effect of some bad Googlebot traffic. And we finally discovered, with great help from our Lucidworks partners, the pattern that was causing the problem. And the hint is, don't allow Google to pass large collections of query terms through the multi-term synonym plugin.
Now, we had good performance. We killed that bot bug. We were feeling pretty good about it. So what do? A/B test it. Give a small percentage of the users that experience, see how it is. We found we were non-disruptive to revenue. Customers were getting a great experience. No new bugs or issues popped up. So what do at that point?
Turn it on.
You turn it on.
Here's an actual graph of it being turned on. When that orange line fell off and the green line stayed nice and smooth, it was an awesome feeling. Not having a single 2 a.m. support call in the 7+ months that we've had it on since has been even better. At the end of the day, no one noticed anything had changed. That was very important to us. We were non-disruptive to revenue. We were meeting customer expectations, finding what they wanted quickly. We were meeting external expectations, being good, fast, and cheap in our development cycle, mostly.
But for our customers, we're a heck of a lot faster.
All right, after the party. So we continued to use solar, the shadow query with a new solar stack. We actually had swapped them. We kept making calls to our SAS provider just for safety. That was the safety harness on the slack line. It's a pretty important piece there. And we continued to use their metrics to validate the rule changes that were ongoing and continuous. So a little bit of trivia. If you guys Google on, or do a YouTube search on Taft Point Highline Slackline in Yosemite, and this is Taft Point in Yosemite, you'll see some insanity about this.
Nope, nope, nope. So whenever you're on a journey, go out in the wilderness, you pack it in, you pack it out. So here's a few things we want you to take with us.
Our image disappeared. Sorry about that.
Oh, this was a really cool slide. That's all right. You start with a solid team. Trust matters in all directions. You use the best tools like Solar and Fusion and Fine-Tuner. You use data to validate everything and make sure you're getting quality results. Stop relying on hope and heroics and bake QA into every process and every bit of the system.
Yep, we made sure that a significant part of the design of the application was the ability to verify the results before they were active. That was very important to us.
So just remember, if you commit to quality and give up hope, plan for success, you'll give yourself a chance to do something really brilliant.
Here's some thank yous. Innovate Solutions, Jason Hellman, Andrea Bilavara.
Andrea's right there. Yay, Andrea.
They helped us quite a bit.
In Lucidworks, Greg Harrison's support team, Grant said, oh, you've got 11 gigs of heap dumps, send it over. And in like 2 days, they're like, oh, here's your URL. Amazing, amazing support.
Here's some contact information for us. I'm DA Smith 836 everywhere, apparently.
And I'm at Real Crispy Dad. Feel free to tweet us, link us in, whatever. Come work at REI with us because it's awesome.
There you go. Any questions?
Cool.
Thank you. Questions?
Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have an NDA with our previous search provider? Talk to me out in the hall, and I'll tell you what it is. I didn't want to put it in the presentation.
We still use some of their tools for other things. So.
Yeah.
So my real question was, how did your business users feel about the new tool that you incorporated?
How did our business users feel about the new tools?
Yeah, because that's a big pain point I know with a lot of transitions that you don't see right up front until you actually have this business user trying to use it.
Obviously, there's going to be a learning curve. It wasn't as dramatic as we thought it was going to be because the solutions ended up being pretty close to each other in functionality.
And having that search expert at REI being our product owner, he was going through helping get these tools in place, so he's able to give the training and teach them in a way that was relevant to them too. So that was huge. Cool.
Any other questions?
One more? Oh, sorry.
Right. Two-phase facet request.
You managed to get 200 milliseconds using 2 hops?
We actually, the first query only takes about 10 milliseconds. Yeah, we have it's a single shard collection, and we can fit it all into memory, so our queries are pretty quick. So we're able to, that kind of gives us a little bit of wiggle room in terms of the experimentation and this kind of stuff that we can do. This probably wouldn't work in a larger collection, right? Yeah, so if we were facing that challenge, I think we'd probably come up with a different solution. Probably doing it maybe preloading some of that stuff before you do the query.
Was there one more?
So at one point you mentioned that you looked at your query distance scores. You said getting to 0 wasn't the goal because so would be better. Were you guys doing any sort of qualitative measurements with your merchandising partners to, I guess, confirm that SOAR was returning better scores?
We had a massive list of the most popular query terms, the most used browse, essentially navigation going to it, and people, the business partners went through line by line through that spreadsheet and actually executed those queries. And if we needed to make tweaks, that's how some of the rules came about. We're like, oh, we're missing boost here, or this isn't relevant. And so we could go through all those. But we had a really good confidence that things were dialed in just from manually putting the eyes on our top.
Yeah, so it was a
queries.
combination of a few data points. The metrics was one of them, but we had other, other
Yeah.
quality metrics that we were looking at too. Yeah.
Cool.
Anything else? Thanks, guys.
Well, thanks, guys.